School, and this is the MuseScore Café for today, September 2nd, 2020. And I am broadcasting today from my Chromebook, as I indicated I would last week, and so I'm going to be trying, some different things technically, because I think this is important to some of the stuff that I want to be talking about today. And I can hear and see that it is in fact working. So, oh, the screen cleared. Oh, okay, never mind. I know what that's about. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So the thing that I was going to be talking about today, the title I give this is "Plays Well with Others," which is, of course, like a kind of a cliched statement that you might see on like a report card or something like that for an elementary school student. And what I want to talk about is using MuseScore in conjunction with different kinds of other tools, other different kinds of computer systems, different other software tools, different websites, etc., and just show you some of the things. There's so many ways you can plug MuseScore into any sort of workflow, and yeah, I just am going to show what I feel like I can. So let me make sure I have my chat popped out. So good morning, good evening to people. Oh, no, I don't want to be hearing this. Sorry. Okay. Um, I don't need to hear myself. Pop out my chat. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to be interested in anyone who's anyone who's watching today live. Feel free to make suggestions of things you would like me to talk about, different kinds of problems you might try to solve in terms of how you would use MuseScore in conjunction with some other programs, or just, general MuseScore questions. I'm always game for those. I'll try to work those in where I can. And or if you have some particularly unique things that you've been doing as far as combining MuseScore with other tools and all, I'm loving to hear about what other people do. Some of my best ideas are ripped off shamelessly from other people, borrowed from other people. No, stolen. Whatever. So hello to everyone. I'm glad to see so many people checking in and saying hi. So I want to talk about a little bit of some of the things that I actually do with MuseScore. Um, and I think the easiest way to get some idea of that, although it's a very skewed idea, is just to look at when MuseScore first starts, what we're seeing here. So one of the things you can see is that I've created a custom palette, and I demonstrate how to do this every once in a while. And I showed it last week. I'll show it again this week if if people are curious. But a custom palette where I've put some of my favorite icons and symbols relating to layout. So I can deal with a lot of layout things all in one place, because these things are actually scattered through 3 different palettes. And but to me, I tend to use them all together in a way. So one of the things that I like to do is create these sort of customized palettes where I can have just some things kind of laid out the way I want. And the reason I have this up at the top and why it's open right now is a big part of what I do. You all know that I teach music. I teach at the university level, I teach privately, I teach online. And so a lot of what I'm using MuseScore for involves creating worksheets of various sorts. In fact, you can see one right here that I am using with a course that I'm teaching at the moment. So uh, this is a worksheet that I've created that has, a whole lot of text and then music. And this music isn't very interesting music, so maybe that's not the best one to show as far as worksheets go, but it at least shows the idea that I'm creating these worksheets that involve text and notation kind of mixed together in different ways. And if I do, in fact, go to some of my other worksheets where there's more interesting material. How about this one? On this one, you can hear the playback of the individual thing. So I create these sorts of worksheets all the time. And to be honest, This method of creating worksheets where all the text is within MuseScore as well as the music, I'm really liking this, I have to say. I like that it gives me a single file I can send to someone and they can either print it. If I want to give them just a PDF to print, that's great. But if they have MuseScore, they can load it and they can hear the playback, or I can put it on MuseScore.com. So I'm going to just show you MuseScore.com, and I think if I just search for one of my own worksheets, I would like to think that it would show up towards the top of the list. No. Oh, come on. Okay, so I have to go and say my scores. And so I see there's some stuff. How do I download without it being posted on the site? So let me address some of these questions in a second here, but let me first just grab one of these worksheets that I have here. And then the idea is that even if you don't have MuseScore, you can send someone a link to the website. And by using MuseScore.com, I mean, I'm not trying to be a commercial for MuseScore.com. It is a commercial site, right? It is how MuseScore, the company, earns their living and manages to pay a couple developers to work on MuseScore and do whatever else they do. I don't have any connection to that business. I just am one of the developers, but I'm not connected to MuseScore.com in any way. But I find it a very useful service. And so, a question that Colleen is asking is, but I'm not quite sure what you're asking actually. How do I download? So if you want to, I guess I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, and so maybe that's one you might want to clarify. But you can certainly upload from MuseScore. If I just hit the Save Online button here, it goes to MuseScore.com. And then you can choose whether it's public or private or unlisted. And for a lot of my things, I make them unlisted, meaning that people won't see them in a search, but if I give them the link, they will be able to access it. So I do things with unlisted scores sometimes. It's basically the same model that YouTube uses. So that's something that I like to do, is put my worksheets on MuseScore.com. But then you can go the next step beyond that too. If I go to where my actual course is, here's one of my courses, you will see that within the course, I have these things, like this is one we were working on in class yesterday. I have recorded a video. Okay, and this is yet another thing to show. I recorded myself presenting using MuseScore as kind of a presenting tool. So when you look at this, it's not very pretty, right? I mean, we got all this stuff that no one cares about. They just want to see the score. Well, I've created a custom workspace that I call presentation. And in my presentation workspace, then you just see the handout itself. And all the rest of the stuff is kind of clear away the clutter. So when I'm when I'm presenting music education using MuseScore, and I'll use it for its playback capabilities, right? Yeah, mostly that's what I use it for, is playback capabilities, because otherwise I could just show them a PDF. But I love to be able to use that playback, and also the ability to do things like zoom in or make little changes, like what would happen if I change that note to A natural, and just make those sorts of changes while I'm presenting. So I'm presenting in this present mode here that I've created for myself, which is related to how I created that custom palette over there. And then I record that video, and I'm using these days Screencastify. So when I talk about using other programs, I'm using, is that Screen? Yeah, this is Screencastify. And Screencastify is, it is a free Chrome plugin, but then you can sign up for a pro plan. It's one of these freemium kinds of things. And it gives you longer record times, other capabilities, etc. And so I've done that. It's very valuable to what I do teaching. So it's one of the things that I am happy to pay for. And so I use Screencastify. And one of the reasons I like Screencastify is that it records the audio well. If I go to record a video, like I don't know what's going to happen if I try to record a video within a video, so I'm not going to go very far with this. But oh, look, there's I think I just stole my own picture from my broadcast, so who knows. But notice it gives me the share audio button. This is what will allow the MuseScore playback to be included in the video, because some people, when they're broadcasting over Zoom, depending on your computer, depending on the settings, depending on all sorts of stuff, you might have trouble getting MuseScore to play over Zoom if you don't get that share audio button. If you get that share audio button, you're generally good. The worst case is you might have to go into MuseScore's settings under Edit, Preferences, I/O, and you might have to select Zoom as an output device. That is not a thing on Chromebook, but it is a thing on Windows, and I guess it's really important on Mac. So knowing that MuseScore has these settings to choose different output devices and including talking to other programs, that's just one of the many things that I wanted to be showing here. So I'm kind of talking a lot about a lot of different things, and let me just see what other questions have come in here. Okay, so one of the questions that I know was going to come up, and that I am not the best person to talk about, but while I'm right here on the screen, Marcus, I'm going to talk about this. So if you want to connect to this, I assume that this Grand org is I don't know if that's a physical hardware device or a software program. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Colleen, in a minute. In any case, if it's a hardware device, you should see, did I just close that? I didn't mean to close that. Gosh dang it. I wanted to just minimize it. So I need to come back to where my chat is so I can pop it out again. Sorry about that. Okay, so in MuseScore settings here, if you have a physical hardware device connected, you should be able to select it here, and then MuseScore will send its output there. It will also, though, play it back through its internal synthesizer, because that's just what it does. So one of the ways you could possibly prevent that from happening is to actually go into MuseScore and say View Synthesizer, and what you can do on the Fluid tab is just either delete that sound font, or you could try turning the volume down. Depending on the device you're connected to, though, turning the volume down here might turn it down also, in the device that you're dealing with. So the other possibility is just mute your speakers. I mean, I've got a mute button right there. On my computer, and that will mute my speakers. So if it's a software device, the same principle applies. If it installs itself as a device that shows up in the whole device driver system, you would be able to select it here. If not, Jack is your ace in the hole. So I don't know if you've already gotten that working, but Jack is a program that connects other programs. So this is another thing that MuseScore can play with. So if you've got some program that you like to use, a synthesizer, a software synthesizer, or a digital audio workstation. You're using, say, GarageBand, or using Pro Tools. You're using some program that deals with audio and MIDI in a way that lets you edit this stuff. MuseScore can send its output to that program. If that program installs itself as a device, great. You can just do it directly in your settings here. If not, you install another program called Jack. And Jack, MuseScore can talk to Jack, and most other programs can talk to Jack also. And so you install Jack, you set it up, you tell MuseScore to send its output to Jack using this control here. You tell the other programs to listen to Jack, and it'll connect everything up for you. So the details of how to do that are horribly system dependent. How you would do that on Windows versus Linux versus Mac, and what particular program you're using. So I won't be able to show that to you here. I can just help point you in the right direction and have you go off and try looking at that. So now I'm going to come back to Colleen's question because it does involve MuseScore.com, I think. So she wants to build her drop to tune. So we're working on an assignment in a class that I teach, and so if you want to just email me a file, well, that's easy enough to do, and you don't need MuseScore.com to do that. Now, posting it to MuseScore.com allows you to share it with multiple people easily. And again, if you use the unlisted option, then you would just send people that link. Like, for instance, and I'll come back because I know you just want to email directly, but I do want to show that since I am talking about MuseScore.com here, that you hit the share button here, and you can grab this link here and email that to people, or you can use the secret link. And the secret link is another link that if the score is unlisted, I think this will allow them to download it as opposed to just look at it online. What happens if I press message? I have absolutely no idea. Oh, I guess it sends a message internally within MuseScore.com. So that's probably not what you want, although actually that would work. So if you did have it posted as an unlisted score, you hit share and then message, and then you pick me out of here. And these, or you could just say, I want to send it to Colleen or whoever. You type someone's name and it will find them, and you can send it as a message within MuseScore.com. If, however, you just want to send an ordinary email message, that's fine too. I go to my email program here and I start a new email. And let me expand this a little bigger. And then I type the address of who I want to send it to. And then when I hit the attach button, all I got to do is find that file. And hopefully you know where you saved it. If you didn't, I can tell you where you saved it. Well, this is on my Chromebook here. And if you're on a Windows computer, you would probably be seeing my documents. On a Chromebook, it's under Google Drive, My Drive, but then you will see MuseScore 3, or if you're using MuseScore 2 still, that would be that, and then scores. And then this is where all your scores are, including any folders that you've created for yourself. And then you just select that file and attach it. So the MuseScore files will attach just fine if the person receiving the file has MuseScore. If they don't have MuseScore, well, then you probably don't want to send them the MuseScore file. They won't be able to open it. So instead, you go in MuseScore to the Export menu and then say Export, and then file type PDF is what you will want. Probably. It's possible that one of these other file formats, like if you just want them to be able to hear the thing and they don't need to read it, you could send them an MP3 or a MIDI file, which they could listen to. Or if they have Finale or Sibelius or some other notation program, Dorico, you can send them a music XML file, and then they can open that in some other notation program. But with PDF selected here, you can save that score as a PDF, and then pretty much anyone who owns a computer or even a phone would be able to open it. All right, let me look over some of the other questions that have come up here. Favor writing for steel pan music. So that's a good question. One of the things that you would have to tell me, Stan, is what that means. I mean, I know what a steel pan is, right? But I don't have a clear sense of what special features might be needed to write for steel pan. So the one thing that I can tell you, so let me go back to, let me show you how I created that workspace. Let me go back to just the standard workspace. I went to advanced. And by the way, if you're not familiar with workspaces, this is the control here. It's usually at the top right where you select between your workspaces. And it normally comes with just basic and advanced. But I created another one by pressing plus. And I'm going to call this the Café workspace. And what I can do is select what I want to be part of this workspace. By part of it, it means what things will be kind of saved, so every time I switch to this workspace, it remembers it. Normally, it's just the palettes. It's just a set of palettes, and whatever else is going on in terms of the toolbars or anything else, that will stay the same. Like when I switch. If I just create a workspace and call it Café, and then I switch between Advanced and Café, it's going to keep all the same toolbars. But if I want to customize my toolbars and have that customization just be part of the Café, I can do that. So I'm going to do that just so you can see. And some of these other things, that's like a whole cafe in itself to really talk about the customizations. But anyhow, I've now created myself. Let me just do these. These are usually harmless ones. Menu. I'm going to recommend you never check the menu bar one. That's going to mess things up. If we ever add things to the menu, they won't get added to your custom workspace. So don't ever check that box unless you know you're going to want to have a very limited menu. And actually, the only way to do that is to edit a file so that it's an advanced feature. Really, we should just take that out of this dialog. So now I have a Café workspace that I can play with, and I can do things like add myself a custom palette, and I'm going to call it Steel Pan. And now I have a steel pan palette. And if I have any special symbols that I want to add, I can add them here. So if I go, I'm going to press Z to show the symbols palette. I don't think there's, what is that? SD, steel drums. Okay. I think this is a symbol used in writing for marching band to tell you, or writing for percussion, like a drum bugle corps kind of situation, to tell someone to switch to the steel drums. But in any case, it's something I can show you that I can just drag that symbol into my custom palette, and now I have that symbol available. Now, as far as writing for steel pan goes, let's see if I've got any where'd my chat go? Did I close my chat again? I need to be better about that. Okay, don't keep closing chat. So the steel pans themselves, I think, are transposing instruments. I think they sound an octave lower than you're actually right. Well, the different size pans will sound differently. So let me see. If I just press I to display the instrument dialog, and I type in steel, okay, I see all these different steel drums here, and you don't see them by default, right? You would if I think I switch to, how about world music? Pitched percussion. Nope, they're not under pitched percussion in world music. Are they under marching band? No, they're not under marching band. I think maybe ethnic. Oh no, world is the new name for ethnic. It used to be called ethnic. So anyhow, if I put in all instruments, now is when you'll see all of these different pitched steel drums. But just by typing steel drum in, or steel, into the search box down here, I can see all my things. So if I just type steel drums, let's see what I get. All right, I get, did I add two staves? Did I double click it? No, it just automatically gives me two staves, because I guess they are believing that steel drum music is written on two staves. I don't know that that's true. Is it? Soprano's only on one. Tenor's only on one. So if you just pick steel drums in general, it'll give you a grand staff, it looks like, treble and bass clef. If you select soprano, it gives you just that. Tenor gives you just that. So if I enter some notes here, I don't know that there's a good sound font for steel drums, so I don't know what I'm going to get. Oh, it is. I don't know how good it is, but it is, right? It is actually some form of steel pan. So it's doing that. Is that transposing? I think that really is middle C. So I have a really bad ear for determining octaves of things. I can't tell. I mean, I can tell if one note is higher than another note if they're being played by the same instrument, but I can't really. I think it's that C, and I think that's middle C. But sometimes I'm fooled by overtones. But I think that wasn't transposing. But how about on this one? That's still the same note. How about on this one? So on this one, we're using the transposing clef here so that it sounds an octave lower than written. And I guess the theory is that whoever set this up believes that that's true of tenor steel drums. A lot of these things were set up by people who know the instruments really well, and then they contributed their customizations to MuseScore because it's open source. But I do have to say, some of the customizations were just done to because we wanted to get something in there, but they weren't done by an expert. And so, if you know more about steel drums than the person who programmed this in there, and you know that tenor drums shouldn't, that this middle C shouldn't sound that low, well then that's something we would want to know about, and maybe you want to get involved in the development of MuseScore. You don't have to be a programmer just to know how to fix some things like that. We can help show you how to do stuff. Oh, my MuseScore audio is not coming through. Okay, so darn it. So this is part of the thing about what I am trying here when I say I'm doing this on my Chromebook in part to show that it can be done. But it means that the program I'm using, even though I hit that share audio when I did the share, oh, look at that. It's only the microphone. So when I did the browse, okay, so you're watching what I'm using. Okay, so here is another program that I'm playing with. This is an online facility called Lightstream. And I guess there's two different products called Lightstream in the world. So Go Lightstream is their website. And Lightstream is what is allowing me to do this cafe right now. It is what is capturing my screen, sending it to YouTube, as well as working the camera for me. It's where, oops, I didn't mean to move that one, but I guess I did. But yeah, there you go. If I move that, I think I would have to actually hit this send to live button. I think you're not going to see that happen. But let's do it just for fun. Updating stream. And now I'll move it back because that looks really silly. I'll send that one now. Okay, so I think what happens is when I selected this thing, I probably didn't have the share audio. So I need to select it and the share audio. And when I do that, nope, I still don't have, I should have an audio here, and I don't. And so that's why the audio isn't coming through. So this is something about how Lightstream is set up where it's not doing it for me. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to add another one. Screen share. So y'all can learn with me, because this is all relevant to how things work together. If the computer audio isn't coming through on a video you're making, and no matter why you're making that video, whether it's a live stream or a Zoom call or whatever, these are some things to be looking out for. So when I share the screen, make sure the share audio button is checked, and then I hit the share. Now I have my screen share here, and this is what will enable me to make sure that it's actually making sound. So I would like to think, oh, and then I can drag this down so it's underneath so that my MuseScore logo shows up. So this tool here has a thing. I guess it's easier just to drag the MuseScore logo up so that the MuseScore logo shows up there. So anyhow, Lightstream, on my Windows computer, I was using a program called OBS. That's a free open source program, and it's great, and it runs on Linux, and I could run it on my Chromebook, except Linux on a Chromebook has a few limitations, and one of them is that Linux programs cannot access all the web camera facilities and stuff. So unfortunately, I can't use OBS to do my broadcast. I have to use Lightstream. But Lightstream does a good job. And now I just have to decide if I want to pay for this service because they used to have a free service and now they don't. So I am not sure. But I believe right now, with everything set the way it is, you're going to hear. So let's find out. I would like to think that just came out on the audio. So you can tell me this. So I am streaming, straight from my Chromebook. I'm using my Chromebook speakers, and my Chromebook microphone, my Chromebook camera, and everything. I don't have any special hardware connected to this. I do have an external USB microphone that I sometimes use when I'm streaming. So the question, oh gosh, I kept thinking I'm turning up the volume and I'm actually refreshing my screen. So I don't know if that just played back or not. You guys can tell me if that played back. I would love it if it did. That would be really nice if it did. But I guess I don't know if it did. Okay, there you go then. Great. All right, so that's what was missing. It was an issue on the Lightstream end of things when I set up. I think what happened is I set it up yesterday and it was working then, but then when I reset it up today to reshare my screen, I forgot to hit the audio button or something. Whatever. That's something I need to learn about Lightstream. But this all has to do with this theme of getting things to work together, right? That sometimes one program might work on its own, but then you have to figure out how to get it to work with another program. That share audio button, I'm telling you right now, is the key to a lot of this kind of stuff. Because if you rely on the fact that, okay, the sound is coming through the speakers, the microphone can pick up that sound, that probably isn't going to work very well for you. And the reason it's not, and this goes for like just using MuseScore on a Zoom call or whatever, as well as making videos, because what's coming through your speakers, often the computer is going to have some feedback prevention circuitry in there. So what comes through the speakers doesn't get picked up by the microphone. There's going to be some smarts built in either to the operating system or to the web browser you're using or the specific tool like Zoom that you're using. There could be some feedback prevention in there that's going to basically defeat your every opportunity to get the audio that comes out of the speaker to make it into the microphone. So sometimes there'll be some settings that you can do to defeat that, and then Zoom has one that says, I think, use original audio or something like that. But it's different on every system, and it's a bit of a crapshoot when you can get that share audio button. And I think that's a Chrome thing. I think because I see it on my Windows computer when I'm using Chrome also, but I don't really know where that dialog comes from. So, boy, there's so many different things to talk about as far as how MuseScore gets used with other tools that I just want to talk about some other things. So yeah, as far as the Chromebook in general, you hear me talk about my Chromebook periodically. I really like this thing, I have to say. This is a relatively high-end Chromebook that I'm on right now. It's the Pixelbook Go. It's so it's not made by Google, but Google's name stamp on it. And but it's not a fancy one. It's not like a detachable screen or anything like that, but it's just got nice hardware on it. The keyboard feels really good. Everything about it feels really good. The speakers sound good. Everything about it is just sort of pretty well designed compared to a laptop you might get at that same price point. And the thing is really light, and that's why it's called the Go. So I like that. But there's $200 Chromebooks you can get that are totally usable. And so the thing is that Chromebooks, when they first came out, really couldn't do much. But over time, they've grown more and more features. And in particular, when they made it possible to run Linux apps directly within Chrome OS, this is when I got super interested. I actually had used a Chromebook before that, and it was possible to run Linux apps on Chromebook almost from the beginning, but it required some major hacks and putting the Chromebook into developer mode, and you really had to do some serious system administration stuff. But I'm going to show you just a really brief thing because this is something I want to do, and I'm eventually going to make a video of it because there is one on the MuseScore website, but it's a bit out of date. In order to get Linux apps running on a Chromebook, I'm going to hit the settings icon here, and then Linux is here, and then all you have to do is make sure it's turned on. If it's not turned on, it'll give you a button to turn it on here. Because I do have it turned on, it's giving me all these other options here. Or if I want to turn it off, I could say remove. once it's turned on, you can go to the MuseScore website and download MuseScore for Linux. So if I go to musescore.org, sorry, not .com, musescore.org, and hit the download button, download software, you want to get this one here that says download app image, suitable for all Linux distributions. Then when you do that, you'll read here's the instructions, and they're pretty terse. It assumes you know a little bit about Linux. If you don't, there's a video you can watch that walks you through it. But like I said, it's a little out of date. I want to update this. But it's really a pretty simple process that consists of basically after you've downloaded the thing, you run this command, chmod, and then you type this one particular thing, / followed by the name of the file, and then the word install. And that's it. So it's basically download it, run this chmod thing, and then run this / name of file, install. And when you do that, MuseScore is now installed, and I think you can see on my screen, there it is, its icon right there. It looks just like any other Chrome program. I can start it from the icon, etc. So it actually integrates pretty darn well. So anyhow, that's my Chromebook spiel, and I'm going on about it because one of the things, because this is start of school year, there's a lot of schools that use Chromebooks, at least in the United States, and so I had mentioned last week I did specifically want to talk about using it on a Chromebook, and so like one of the things that's kind of cool about and this doesn't require you to be using a Chromebook, but I did a whole Café on this topic before, and I got kind of lost in the weeds a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and save this score. It's not very interesting, but I'm going to save it, and I'm going to put it, let's see, where will I want to put it? I'm going to put it under Mastering MuseScore, Café, and then this is going to be Steel. All right. Remember that. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Okay, so now I see I got some new questions coming in. Where do you load the MuseScore? So this is what I hopefully was just explaining. You need to go through that process that I just explained. So let me post that into the chat. So this is the instructions that are very terse. Again, I'm going to try. In fact, that's my goal today. I'm going to put this on my to-do list for today. Is this I want to make better. I want to make this set of instructions clearer. So I'm going to go to my chat. And do that. And I'm also going to post a link to this video. Mm-hmm. There we go. So there's this video demo that I said is a bit out of date. Yeah, it's a little bit out of date. It's not that it's changed. It's not like following these instructions won't work. We've made some improvements to the that could simplify it a little bit, and I think I can just rewrite it to be a little clearer. Okay, so I mentioned I'm sort of forgetting some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So one of the things that I want to talk about as far as playing well with others is as far as MIDI goes. So Marcus, you asked about using that organ. I assume that was an organ simulator type of program, and that you could. And I talked about how yes, you can route MuseScore's MIDI output into it. Well, you can also get MIDI input into MuseScore, and this isn't something that I personally do a lot. I just don't. But I'm going to, I actually don't know if this dang computer here has a rear camera on it. I've never actually used the rear camera on this thing. So I'm about to find out if it has one by switching. Let's see if I can add another thing to this. Add camera. Is there it looks like I don't have an option here, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I think this thing doesn't have one, so I'm just going to turn it around and show you. My setup here It's not much of a setup because, again, I don't do this often. But that there is my Windows computer and a little MIDI keyboard. Right? So I have it connected, and I'm doing this. Let's see if I can do this smarter. If I now go over to MuseScore on my Windows computer and turn my sound back on, here's my Windows computer and a little MIDI keyboard. Let's mute this guy. There we go. Okay. If you have a MIDI keyboard connected, it totally will allow you to enter notes with it. So if I go in here and I'm in note input mode, I can start pressing some notes, right? And they get entered into MuseScore. There they are. So it does work. Now, a lot of people want to say, well, now can I just play in real time and have it just sort of transcribe what I'm playing? The answer is that's really a complicated thing to do. It's a technical challenge to try to sort things out in real time, so that I'll just put it here and let me go to MuseScore. So it's something that we do a little bit, but not much of. So I'm going to give just the briefest demonstration of that because I know it's something that people are often curious about. So let's see. I'm going to go full screen on this guy. All right, I believe now you're getting the camera full screen. So I've got my pedal connected, my damper pedal to this. I'm going to go into real time. First, I'm going to go with manual mode so you can see this. I got my foot on the pedal. I think you have to take my word for it on that. I can hold a C down, and now I'm going to tap my pedal 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and then let go of the C. What did I get? I got 3 quarter notes tied together. Then I'll play a D and just tap the pedal once. And then let go. Notice, so when I first entered that, it gave me that C tied together. It looks ridiculous. That is not how what 3 beats worth of C should look like. I don't know if you can actually see that or not. But it was giving me 3 C's tied together. As soon as you finish the measure, it corrects the notation for you, and it shows you as a dotted half note. So that was me tapping the pedal to be the beat. But that's real-time manual. If I go to real-time automatic, I can just press the pedal, and it's going to start a metronome. All right, and this is why I don't do this. And I press the pedal again to stop. So I just played along with the metronome, and it entered it. It actually entered it in real time. Notice I actually played a wrong note in there. My finger slipped. I hit a D, and it didn't come out because it's basically rounding everything off to the nearest beat because I have quarter notes selected on the toolbar. If I selected eighth note on the toolbar, it would round everything off to the nearest eighth note, and the metronome would click eighth notes. So this is a way of entering things. It works. I'm not personally like a huge fan of using that sort of real-time entry because I find it fussy and error prone, and I am not more efficient using it. And part of it is because MuseScore's implementation is kind of limited, but I felt the same way with Finale when I was using it. It had a much more sophisticated real-time input mode, and the first notation I used was actually a sequencer that had built-in notation. It was called Notator. It was originally called Sequencer? No, it was called something else before it was Notator. But then Notator was the version of that program that had notation built into it. And it was fantastic as a sequencer and really did a fairly good job of letting you input notes in real time. and I'm a professional pianist. I can play pretty accurately, but the reality is still the amount of work it took me to fix something up to actually get it to look like what I wanted it to look like was more than it took me to just enter the notes manually. And people who are already good pianists but not already good at entering notes manually might not appreciate that it's possible to get good at entering notes manually. But I promise it is. I promise I can enter whatever music I want to enter here. I'm just fast at entering notes, and yeah, I can do it almost as fast as I can type anything else, and you can learn to do that. You really can. So rather than like fretting and worrying about the fact that maybe the real-time input isn't quite as good as you might want, yeah, I think just investing some effort in really getting good at using the computer keyboard shortcuts to enter music, you can do pretty well. So yeah, one of the things that's actually quite good. Okay, yeah. Cakewalk was also one of the programs that was around at that same time period that I'm talking about here. Basically, late '80s, early '90s. Creator, that was the name of the. This was on an Atari computer back when Atari made computers. That was like I think 1 month back in the late '80s. It was a little longer than that, but not much. But one thing that you can do that is better, and I don't know if this is what you're alluding to, if you're talking about Cakewalk, but if you have a program that can record MIDI, like a sequencer program, or if you have like a digital piano that has a MIDI recorder facility built into it, and then you can save a MIDI file. If you import that MIDI file into MuseScore, it actually can work pretty well. So if I play something live and then I record that MIDI file, yeah, I don't have any MIDI files that I recorded live because I don't record MIDI files. But if I do go to where I've got some MIDI files that I found, that other people have sent, let's see. Oh yeah. Oh, so that's one thing about being on the Chromebook. I will say, when you're running on the Chromebook and you're running a Linux app. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Let me go back to sharing my screen because that's going to be more interesting than looking at me very shortly. So I'm going to give me 1 minute here. I'm going to hide this guy. No, it's this one. There we go. All right, and then send to live. All right, now you get my screen share back. Okay, so and one thing is that sometimes just the display of files in a dialog on the Chromebook when you're using a Linux app can be slow because it's going through like several layers of indirection to get this list of files. So sometimes just opening the file dialog is a little slower than I want. So that's one that someone didn't use a metronome when they were recording, so I don't really want to use that one. That's not going to work well at all. But if I just look at the MIDI files here and I have something that someone maybe entered, here's something that someone created by MIDI. I don't think they did this to a live performance. Maybe I don't know how they recorded that, but it will import a MIDI file, and will do a better job of it than trying to play in real time into MuseScore. So if you're really, really wanting to use MIDI as an input, that's what I would recommend. Record as a MIDI file into another program. So I think about what programs I have on my Chromebook, and so I've really been having fun with BandLab. It's a website and an app where it's like an online digital audio workstation. So it's got it has a variety of tools for manipulating audio and MIDI, but it's in sort of a collaborative way. It's not quite as collaborative as like Google Docs, where you can have multiple people working on the same file at the same time, but you can share the file, and it does work. Oh, and by the way, the reason when I saved that file a minute ago, let me just do this one thing that I want to do of moving over to my Windows computer and open. Oops. Let me get out of node input mode. Open that same file. So it was under my scores directory, then Mastering MuseScore, Oops, I must have clicked something wrong. Try that again. MuseScore, Café, Steel. There it is. So if you can see that, that is that same file I saved on my Chromebook a few minutes ago. I saved it because I saved it on my Chromebook. It went to Google Drive because everything on the Chromebook goes to Google Drive, but I've got MuseScore set up to read from Google Drive. My MuseScore 3 folder is actually linked via a shortcut to be on Google Drive, so that once I save a file on my Chromebook, I can load it on my Windows computer and vice versa, so that I can kind of feel like I have the same environment regardless of which computer I'm on. This is something I find extremely valuable. Realistically, I'm doing more and more of my work these days on the Chromebook and using the Windows computer for less and less. But there are times when I still use it, and in those times, it's definitely the case that it works pretty seamlessly. It takes about maybe a minute or so if I save a file on one computer before it shows up on the other computer. So if you write, okay. So the deal is, MIDI is not a notation format. So if you put things into a score like dynamics and slurs and text and stuff like that, MIDI doesn't save any of that. So no, a full score is not going to come through at all. The only thing MIDI saves is the notes themselves. But assuming that you and it doesn't even save like the spelling of the notes, like whether a note should be C sharp or D flat. It doesn't have any concept of that either. So if you export a score as MIDI and then load it back in, you're going to lose all of that stuff. Well, that stuff wasn't there when you play it live anyhow, right? It didn't. You might be playing with dynamics, you might be playing soft and loud, but the actual dynamic markings, mezzo, piano, etc., are not there. So when MuseScore imports it, it's going to play it soft and loud, but you're not going to see mezzo, forte, fortissimo, etc. You're just going to hear the playback at the same dynamic that you just did. So I'm going to try a little experiment. Give me one moment here. I'm actually here, let's do a little tour of my office, shall we? This is my music area over here, the microphone that I use occasionally, and I'm going to steal a USB adapter from over there. Okay. I stole that because I want to put the MIDI keyboard directly. I guess I could have done this on the Windows computer, but I want to put my MIDI keyboard into my Chromebook, and I'm going to record into BandLab. So, can you play a crescendo in one note? Well, I can. Well, first of all, on a keyboard, no. But any MIDI file, if it's not quantized, it's just going to have the note durations. And if you didn't create it specifically to be limited to this sort of basic stuff like this, looks perfect. Really does, because it is that simple. But if it's not that simple, it won't. But I'm gonna record a little thing into BandLab. Okay, so I'm gonna tell it that I'm gonna record my keyboard here, and I forget if I have to do something. Oh, there it is. I select my device, and I'm gonna hit the record button. And there's my thing. Now I want to do that again because I should have the metronome on, because this is part of what I'm going to talk about. If the thing isn't quantized, if it's not really played to the metronome, it's not going to come in very well. So I'm going to try again. So I will say that I deliberately played the rhythm kind of bad. it there. But so here's my my thing, and can I export it as MIDI? Yep, there we go. So I'm going to save that file I just recorded as a MIDI file, and it's going to be cafe.midi, and I'm going to load that thing into MuseScore and see what we get. So yeah, MIDI is definitely not going to, like if you play the piano with two hands, it's going to have no idea which hand played which note, right? So there's all sorts of stuff it's not going to get right. But there you go. Here I meant to play that chord together, but it apparently thinks that I played the C just enough later than the E and the G that it should have notated as separate. I don't remember that I did that. Let's hear what it actually sounded like in here. So I can tell looking at my file here, looking at what's going on, looking at this little bar here, that the low C here is what this bar represents. I did in fact play it a little after those notes, and MuseScore, right? So this note, you can see that note starts after these. So my thumb was a little late getting to that C, and MuseScore kind of quantized that to me a little more than I would have wanted. But I can certainly, I don't know if there's a humanize. I want the opposite of that. How about quantize? Ooh, so look at that. It actually moved it over that way. But interesting. I don't know. I don't know my way around the MIDI editing facility in BandLab. I was expecting it to line up with these, but I guess I have to quantize notes one at a time. Maybe I select everything and then hit the quantize button. Ha! Look at that. All right, I'm going to try this again. I'm going to export that region again because I think it's going to work out better this time. Export as MIDI. And again, Café. Oops, Café. That's fine. I will load now Café.mid. And so we'll maybe see that this gets fixed up a little bit. This, I played it so badly that it's still going to look weird. I meant to play eighth notes, and it's just not what I did at all. So there's my Café.mid. And yeah, it's even worse, right? So at least it got this rounded off right, but I played that scale so far off that the quantizing actually made it worse, and I was better off with the way it was. So MIDI is very. If I had quantized it to the eighth note instead of to the 16th, it might have worked better. I'd have to play around a little more with. Oh, look at this! I got a quantization setting here in MuseScore. There, that's a little better, but I know I didn't really want those triplets, so how about if I tell it, no, I don't want any triplets. I didn't mean to do any triplets. Yeah, okay. It still thinks there's certain 16th notes in there, and it still thinks there's multiple voices. I promise I didn't mean to do multiple voices, so let's try only one voice. Oh, okay. Now it's realizing that these notes overlapped a little bit because I'm being a good pianist and playing things legato. Is there a way to do that? Oh, well, it is doing simplified durations. Anyhow, you can keep playing with all these things to try to get it to import a little better. But a lot of these things are really better off done by getting it cleaned up in your sequencer. But the reality is, if you don't play exactly perfectly eighth notes, MuseScore is not going to show you exactly perfectly eighth notes, and you're just going to you're not going to necessarily like what you see. So there are some programs that will try to like do show me what I meant, not what I played. Do what I mean, not what I say. This is a show me what I meant to play, not what I actually played. So some programs do a better job of that than others. We do okay. Some other programs do slightly better in some ways. But this is why, for me, it's, I could have entered that same piece of music into MuseScore way faster than I'm doing any of this business. Okay, so I think I've talked about a whole lot of different things. There's so many other things that I can talk about. One of the things that I should also mention is uh, going the other way with the MIDI, right? If I have my if I have some song here, like my lovely steel pan song, which sounds totally ridiculous, but if I export that to MIDI, and again, I get to wait a minute for that dialog. The dialog's not always this slow to appear. To be honest, I think it has to do with how many files are in that folder, and the test folder that it's trying to display has thousands of files in it. And anyhow, that's what's happening there, and I don't know why. But oh, the Café folder. That's weird that it's having issues with that folder because there's nothing in that one. Anyhow, so test, and I want to export as MIDI, and I'm going to call this steel.midi. I can load that MIDI file into BandLab, and if I tell it I want MIDI files, or at least all files, then I can go to MuseScore 3. Where did I put it? Did I put it? I think I put it in my test folder. Steel. There we go. So now let's hear what we got. So I just built this thing that's a combination of my live playing with export from music. Well, apparently, when it imported it, thought that staff should have been piano and not steel drums, even though it's called steel drums. That's BandLab's problem. I've noticed it does that a lot. It's making its own guess as to what instrument to use, and sometimes it's guessing wrong. But I can certainly tell it I want. I don't know exactly where these things are, to be honest. Are they in drum kits? Maybe it's under percussion. Steel drum. There we go. All right. So now when I play it back, there we go. So that was the MIDI output from here imported into BandLab. So yeah, you can do that kind of stuff and do this. So there's a good question. If your Chromebook has an ARM processor, right now, the latest build that I know of that was ever made of MuseScore for ARM is very, very old. I've inquired a little bit about what would be involved in building for ARM again, but I haven't got a good answer, and I don't know how to do it. I would love it if there's some developer with developing for ARM experience that could maybe just step in and make us a build, because it's open source. I would love that. I don't actually know the answer, but in principle, it is totally possible to build MuseScore for other architectures. I know there was a build done for Raspberry Pi, which I forget what its processor is. There was a special build done for that system, and I don't know exactly. I don't know the details, and I don't know what the most recent one of those is either. So anyhow, there are so many different ways that you can be doing this sort of thing, and I didn't even show you one of my favorite ways, so I'm going to show you that real quick. I can take a screenshot of anything I want using this screen capture tool, and I just take the area that I want. I hit Control-C to copy, and then I go into my Google Doc that I started over here, and I got blah, 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 blah. Come on, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'm typing. Sometimes when I'm broadcasting live, also things slow down. So I got some text, and now Control-V, and there's my musical example, right? So it is that easy to build documents that combine text and notation like that. If I were writing a book like an actual educational book where I wanted musical examples from MuseScore, I would totally do it this way. I mean, I've written books and I've used similar things before, but not exactly this. And I think if I were doing it today, I would do this. But as I mentioned, I am really enjoying not having an actual book, but instead these sort of interactive handouts that are just kind of really fun. And here's just a little diversion. When you write a book, you write text and you explain things multiple ways, and you have word wrap and you can write long paragraphs. But MuseScore doesn't have word wrap, right? And just the text processing facilities are limited compared to a word processor, just like the music notation capabilities of Google Docs are pretty limited. But I'm trying to make lemonade out of these lemons. My handouts, I don't use paragraphs. I create bullet lists. I'm actually using a minus sign instead of a bullet because the screen reader that I was using when I had Elizabeth, the blind student that you've met, if you've been following these cafes for a while, the screen reader she was using would read the bullet character, and that was sort of annoying. And the dash, it just sort of it interprets as a little pause, which is more to the point. So anyhow, these are like bullet lists, and I don't even allow myself to have a line in bullet list that's more than one line long. That means that I didn't come up with a way to be concise enough about the point I wanted to make. So this handout, I'm talking about function of diatonic chords and minor keys, and you can literally work it down to there are 5 points that I am making, and then here's the example of it. Here are 4 points, and these 3 are subservient to this point, etc. Because I do use that. I use indenting sometimes to help give it structure. But I totally, if it's going to take me more than one line worth of text to explain something, then I need to figure out a way to divide it up into 2 points. Just disciplining myself to do that has allowed me to create these really focused bits of text that I think cause this to read better than a book in some ways. I am writing in full sentences with periods at the end of the sentence, which again I'm doing because the screen reader pauses nicely there. But in any case, using the limitations of MuseScore to my advantage to say, well, I'm going to then create text that works in this setting, and it turns out to be text that works well in an educational context anyhow. It really works in a lot of ways better. It's sort of like when you go through a textbook and you highlight things in yellow. This is the highlighted stuff all collected into one place. So anyhow, that's a totally random little spiel about something else entirely. Okay, so I've been talking a lot of stuff, and that's a lot of stuff, and there's any number of other things, but I'm happy to see the questions and things that I've got along the way. And so great, and I will be back with you next week talking about who knows what. I'm always up for your suggestions. Thanks for being with me today, and I am going to get that little tutorial thing on installation on Chromebook. I'm going to get that updated, and I've actually written a little tool that can help make the process even easier. So I'm going to try to get that uploaded somewhere and incorporate that to make the process even simpler. So I hope everyone's having a good day. Have a good week, and I will see you all next time. Okay, thanks a lot. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to get in the habit of doing that. Subscribe. Okay, see you all later. Now I have to remember how to go turn this thing off. There we go. End stream. Bye.